It would be so easy to take the glory. And as personal trainers, it might be so easy for us to say, we created that specimen. We made that person change their lives. And that sells some contracts and that gets you some book deals and maybe that gets you a podcast interview. But the reality is, if we want to make a real change in someone's lives, is we have to empower them. We have to give them the power. We have to take a step back. We have to become the guide, and that's it.
Welcome to the Fitpreneurs, the show that will help you flex your business muscles so you can make more money and live the life you really want. No more complaining, whining, or being a wimp. It's time to pump up your fitness business and push yourself beyond your comfort zone. So no girly men or lazy ladies allowed. It's time for me to do some push-ups and turn things over to your host, Simon Lovell.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Fitpreneurs. This is Simon Lovell, and I want to welcome a very special co-host today. It is the awesome Wesley Chapman. Wesley, welcome to the show. Before we dive into the intro all about you, I just want to remind you guys, make sure that you head to iTunes and give us your review after you've listened to the show. Also, you want to be now following on Periscope. You can find me, Simon Lovell. Make sure it's the correct profile. It's at BoyLovell, BoyLovell, also on Twitter. Also, head to the Facebook page at the Fitpreneurs. I'm super excited about this episode because it's going to be one with passion, it's going to be one with purpose, and it's going to be one that you guys are going to want to take massive action on. You know, I traveled to San Diego. I'm actually in the process still of moving over to the States. I was in San Diego a couple of years ago, and I went to an event. It was a really powerful event. Gary Vaynerchuk was there, author of Jab, 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 Right Hook, and a guy called Michael Bernoff, who was doing some personal interventions. And at that event, I met an awesome guy called Wesley, who's on the podcast today. We connected, we had good fun at the event. A series of events that happened directly after the event that I had has enabled him to change literally the lives of young people all across the world, from literally killing themselves to self-harming and lots of other things. Wesley, thank you so much for coming on the show as a co-host to share with these guys just some of the amazing things that you're doing, business tips, psychology. You've been in business. We want to talk about your background, all sorts of things. I know that there's going to be so much value that you're going to be able to provide to the awesome Fitpreneurs listening. You've been in business for a long time. You've consulted with Fortune 500 companies, since the age of 19, and you really understand psychology and how things work. Let's go back again to San Diego when we first met. And why don't you tell the guys the story and exactly that tipping point that really changed everything?
Yeah, so good framing. You've set me up. I've definitely got to deliver. So I like that. You've put my mind in the right direction. The San Diego event that you're talking about was an interesting event. I wasn't going to go. Really had no purpose of being there. Gary Vaynerchuk is a friend. That was cool. Hang out with him. That was kind of what was in the back of my mind. The rest of it, I'm not really interested in. But for some reason, I decided to go, and that event started as you said, a chain reaction of changing my entire life. And it wasn't anything particular at the event. It was the people that were at the event. I think a lot of times business owners, they get wrapped up in what am I going to get by going to XYZ location or XYZ place. And this is just another testament that you get people, you get connection, you get network, which creates net worth. And so I was at this event. I met you. We had I think we had a couple of conversations. I mean, it was a 3-day event, so I think we spent a couple of different moments talking and doing different things. And I was very intrigued by some of the, like Michael Bernoff. There was a couple other guys there that were interesting, but I really started to just see other people and other positions and other ideas, and it started getting me thinking. And Michael Bernoff was a very interesting person to me. Here he was, almost this Tony Robbins kind of physical presence. He was a very big dude, had the big hands, all that kind of fun stuff. And Yet he was doing these transformations and at the same time talking about working for Fortune 100 companies and Fortune 500 companies. And my whole career has been in very corporate America. We don't talk about self-help. We don't talk about mental well-being. We don't talk about things unless they are going to make you money. 15 years ago, talking about organic was hippie. Now it's every freaking brand in the world is playing organic or the mind games or anything like that. So, but in my day, it wasn't. So I was looking at this guy and I'm thinking, how can this man be talking about Ernst & Young and I don't even know the other names that he worked with, and then sitting there talking about all this hippie stuff, in my world. So I was very intrigued by this. And so I went and talked to him and just took him to the airport, had some one-on-one time with him, explained to him my story, which we'll probably get to later in this. And he just said a few things that were very powerful, very encouraging. Honestly, I don't remember them verbatim or anything, but at the time they were just what I needed to hear. And as I got out of as I dropped him off at the airport and he took off and I went the other direction and was driving home, I just had this profound vision, or whatever you want to call it, of literally I'm driving down the freeway and on the freeway is this audience. Thousands and thousands of people standing in the freeway, and basically my car was the stage, and they were all wearing a t-shirt, a black t-shirt that had the words "I am human" on it, and the words were glowing. It was very, very, very interesting. And as I went home that night, I started I told my fiance, I've got this vision. I have this idea. I need to put it on paper. I built out an entire brand, designed the t-shirts, bought a bunch of domains, and I bought one particular domain called A Human Project and designed a shirt, had them ordered on one of those shirt websites and kind of went through that and went through the whole process. And then that just sat there for about 2-3 months until the next, chain of events happened. But that's kind of what that San Diego thing was, the ball kind of getting rolling to this whole new world that I'm now in.
And tell us about like the turning point with the youngsters that you started working with. You've got your own kind of backstory and it's very public about your kind of past and stuff like that. What was that kind of one moment that you kind of told me about before, which I think the guys would be really interested to hearing about, which was like, I've absolutely got to make this my full-time gig.
Yeah. So, as I went through, these next few months and few processes, and there's quite a bit of a backstory here that I think I need to give people a perception so that I'm doing this all justice. And that is that, you mentioned it, since the age of 8.5, I've been an entrepreneur. There's a reason that I had to be an entrepreneur. I think there's two forms of entrepreneurs. There's the ones that have to be, and there's the ones that think it's a glorious life. And so they choose to go into being an entrepreneur. And those that have done any kind of entrepreneurialism know that it's glorious and it's fun and it's awesome, but it's not what we were sold by the magazines. Let's put it that way. And so it's very difficult. And quite frankly, no 8.5-year-old is going to choose to become an entrepreneur. There's usually some form of events that happen. And I had those events, and we can get into those a little bit later. But so my entire life up to this point had been entrepreneurialism. And about 4 years prior to this event in January in San Diego, I had sold my business, walked away, left, and went on a 4-year journey of kind of figuring out life, figuring out what was the point. And that started and spurred after I had reached a point of having the house on the hill, with the movie theater and the extra bedrooms that you never walk into and the 9 cars and the vacations. And, I had all of that. And I was sitting on a beach and I remember just looking out at the ocean and going, is this it? I mean, is this what I've worked so hard for? And when you get to that point, and everybody who's listening to this might be like, wow, 9 cars, a big house, private beaches, all this stuff. But when you get to that point in your life, you start looking at yourself, you start looking at your relationships, you start looking at everything that you've quote unquote fought for. And you start to question, is this the reality that I want? Is this the life that I want? Is this the battle that I want to keep fighting? And for me, it was very clear I didn't. And so I went home, left, and there were a bunch of different factors. And, of course, there's tons of stories involved in all this. But the simplicity is I left and I started a 4-year journey of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And in that, becoming very authentic to who I was. And this is where the backstory of why I became an entrepreneur is so important is I was very ashamed of my life. I was very ashamed of who I was, and my entrepreneurial success was actually a cloak to hide behind the reality of who I was. And who I was I was an abandoned child by both of my biological parents. I was abused, I was raped, I was beaten, I was tortured. I went through all kinds of horrific acts that no child should ever have to endure for the bulk of my childhood until I was about 18 years old, 17, 18 years old. And nobody knew that. I lied to all my high school friends. I lied to as many people as I possibly could about where I came from, who I was, who my father was. All kinds of different things. And so the entrepreneurial veil made it very easy because all anyone needed to care about is how much money was I going to make you, how much money did I have, and how expensive was my suit or my car that I was driving. And so, which was very fake and was very unreal too, and very, I like to say, very uncore-like. I was not communicating with my core identity and who I was. I was ashamed of it. And so this journey, this 4-year journey, was the first time that I started exploring who is Wes Chapman, and is it okay to express who I am to the public? And I started very slowly. I started with a blog, and I started with, just little things here and there. And in that slowness of my side, the world was accepting it at a rate that was ridiculous. My first blog got 500 people that read it. My second blog got 5,000. My third blog got 20,000. And very, very quickly, I was averaging 20 to 25,000 every time I put a blog out. And this was now 7-8 years ago. So this was a different marketplace than we have now. And so I started exploring that, and I started speaking on weekends to kids and to prisons and youth homes and foster facilities. And I started getting this just overwhelming respect from the children and really moving a needle. But it still wasn't enough. I was still stuck in this world of kind of moving forward monetarily and moving this way. And while I'm doing all of this, and I'm trying not to make this a chaotic interview, but as I'm doing all of this, I'm also studying the brain. And so I spent about 17 years studying the brain and studying, and I was studying it more for the purpose of making more money, marketing strategies. How could we communicate things, manipulate? I dabbled in NLP. I dabbled in, quantum physics, just different things to figure out like how do things work, and how do we manipulate the mind to take action, which was a negative thing, but it also led to a lot of positive discoveries. And so in this whole journey, in this whole experiment, I'm just gaining all of this knowledge, and I really had no idea why. And so now that gives a little bit more background. So we fast forward, the San Diego thing happens. I'm going down the freeway, see all the people. 3 months after that, I was asked to speak at a public school, which I'd never done before. I'm a very blunt guy. I don't sugarcoat anything. Sometimes I'll let an F-bomb slip. Sometimes I'll, get passionate about something and really get into the reality of situations. And so speaking in prisons and boys' homes and foster care facilities, that's not a problem. There's no real censoring that I have to worry about there. Public schools is different. It's public, obviously. And in the world that we live in, at least here in the United States, we have a real big problem right now with PC control, political correctness control. And so it is realistically dangerous to open your mouth in the land of the free and the home of the brave. And as I was going through some of these things, and I was going through my speech, my fears, I started doing some research, asked the principal, some of the parents to send information from the school, found out about some bullying that was going on that was horrific, kids getting lit on fire, suicide attempts. I believe they'd had 71 suicide attempts. I got to go back and look at my notes. I could be wrong on that. But they had just a smorgasbord of suicide attempts, and these were 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And so as I started thinking about my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade experience, now my home life was one thing, but my schooling, I was like, wow, that was a really young time in my friends' lives and people's lives. And I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I'm like, she's not too far away from, being in that world. And I just sat there and was looking at all the statistics of the school and just was very mortified. But I still had this immense fear of going in and telling my story, and somebody would sue me because I used the word, molestation, or I got passionate and, maybe dropped an F-bomb or, did something like that. So as I got up on stage, or right before I got up on stage, the principal came up to me and said, "Hey, Wes, we are going to bring more students into this little auditorium. And it was more like a music hall. It wasn't like a full-on auditorium. And it held about 200-300 people. And he said, is that okay that we bring more people in? And I said, hey, it's up to you and the fire marshal, just kind of hoping that he would, realize that it's full now. Let's not do anything else. 200 little kids is enough. And as I got ready to go on stage, I was told that there were over 700 kids in this little room. And as I got out on the stage, the kids were just all the way up to the stage. They were sitting on each other's laps. They were sitting in the aisles. The fire marshal would not have been happy about this experience. And it was intimidating. My largest audience to date up to this point was 10,000, but I was in Germany speaking, and that was a little different thing. I wasn't, being vulnerable, and I wasn't worried about PC, but 700 kids was very intimidating. And I got out on the stage and I started doing my normal speech, except way toned down and way politically correct. And I started getting booed. I started getting heckled. The kids started throwing racial slurs at me. There was all kinds of things that were happening in this moment. And I'm a religious guy. I believe in God. And I took a moment and I said a prayer, quietly, obviously, just between him and I. And I said, listen, dude, we got two options here. We can either help me out and calm this crowd down, or cut the power and get me out of here, because this isn't working. And in that moment, I had this overwhelming feeling of, it's not about you, it's about them. And that was very poignant. That was very meaningful to me. It was exactly what I needed to hear. And that translated in my mind and my chemical makeup of, I don't know if I can swear on your podcast, but
you can.
Okay. So, knock the fuck off. Like, just freaking stop this. This is not what you need to be doing. This is not why you're here. You are here to make a difference. And so in that moment, I dropped all of my worries, my fears about, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to do the right thing? Am I going to be the right person? And went into just being real. And for the next 18 minutes, you could hear a pin drop in the auditorium. Tears, laughter. I like to speak, and I've worked that art very, very well. So it's not just about, just blurping out stuff to them, which is exactly what I'm doing on this podcast. So don't listen to that part. But usually you have a format, get them to laugh, get them to cry, get them to make action, get them to interact, all that. But during the parts that they needed to be, you could hear a pin drop. And after the presentation, I was fairly exhausted. It was mentally taxing on me. We had to drive 3 hours to get there. So my fiance and I were basically just packing up and getting ready to leave. And the principal came up to me and he said, hey, would you stick around for a little bit? And I thought, sure. Why? This is California. I'd like to get home before rush hour. What do you want me to stick around for? And he split the curtain. I was backstage. He split the curtain and there was just a line of youth. And he said, they want to talk to you. And the short part of this, to wrap this up, is that line lasted for just over 4 hours that I spent talking to youth after youth. And I could tell 4 hours of stories of youth telling me everything from being molested, beaten, neglected, abandoned, abused, and by everybody from their uncles, their neighbors, their fathers, their brothers, their stepfathers. It was a smorgasbord of stories that were just flooding into me. And we can talk more about how, that went. But the reality in that moment for me is that I had been prepared for 33 years of my life for that moment and for what that moment, propelled me into, and was a launching pad for what we're doing now. And every aspect, entrepreneurialism, connectivity, the brain, the studying, the psychology, all of the things that I had done up to that point were prepping me for that moment to be on that stage, in that place, in that position. And every weird thing that I did up to that, even the event that you and I met, meaning weird in the sense of like, why am I here? This isn't something I want to be doing. This isn't someplace I need to be. I could come up with 1,000 other places to be than here. All these moments, the certain places that I spoke at, the certain things, it was this domino effect. And a lot of it started it's another tangent story, but a lot of it started with something as simple as me taking a photo for a guy whose cell phone died, which actually, introduced me to Nick Unsworth. And it's just all these things happened, which led to this moment. So, a lesson here for somebody, and you're listening to this whole rambling thing for the last 10 minutes, is that if you're in your life, don't compare your life to mine. Don't compare your stuff to my stuff. Look at your own life and look at where you're not saying yes and where you're not taking opportunities, because it's the smallest and simplest acts that create the biggest and best reactions. And so many times we're looking for the events or the places to be that are going to give us the best ROI. And in all reality, your best ROI is just being in as many places as you physically and possibly can be in, and meeting as many people as you possibly can, so that these kind of things can happen for you. So that kind of gives you a small background, and now we're up to the point of 4 hours talking with the youth and getting ready to really change my life forever.
The reason we're on this podcast is because we connected, and I spend a lot of time in the UK, and actually I only see your posts generally when I'm in the States. And I saw one of the videos you posted, and when you get an overwhelming desire to want to connect and align with something, it was almost like I really wanted to connect. Like there was this once, I don't normally give to. I get asked a lot to give to charity, and I do like to give, but I sometimes people message me and I don't get any compelling feeling, right? And once there was someone was doing a race for, I think it was the London Marathon, and she actually died doing the race. And for some reason in that moment, I was compelled to give to that charity. It was kind of funny how with this, I kind of connected up my past and this whole mission for you. And I was like, this makes complete sense to me. And I hadn't really before that had anything I really wanted to connect with. The point I'm going into is with personal trainers, what's your kind of viewpoint on, a lot of trainers go into the industry, they've got their own backstory and they're still struggling. A lot of trainers go into the industry because they're lacking in confidence, because they've had that low sense of self-esteem. However, they don't align with something that will pull the business actually further forward because of their alignment and passion with something. So what's your viewpoint on that?
It's really interesting you bring that up. And in the last, probably 60, 70 days, I've been getting a lot of questions from individuals who are, like you said, they're personal trainers, they're fitness enthusiasts, they're, whatever. And I'm not in that category, but I'm also not healthy. My fiance right now is running a 26.2 mile marathon right now. She's got 6 miles left, so I'm giving her a little energy there. But, fitness and exercise and doing all of that is very interesting. It's a very interesting world, and we've shifted a little bit. And personal trainers, as you said, there's a lot of studies that show that a good bulk of individuals who go into the personal training world have some trauma in their lives, in their past lives, in their childhood, or they've had some traumatic thing happen and they've had to work with their health and create these trauma points. And they jump into that and they get into that world. And then, as you know, and as everyone who's listening to this knows, there's so many challenges that you weren't ready for. There's some on the business side, on the mental side, especially on the mental side, and especially in the world that we live in now, and especially how we have identified physical success or physical, the way you look is a determining factor on if you're a healthy or if you're a successful trainer, and everyone's pushing those limits and they're body hacking and they're doing this. So we may or may not get into it in this interview, but there are actual chemical things that happen that actually reverse and create depression in people who are fit. And so there's some things we can talk about there. But to your passion question is that when you dive into something trying to hide something else, it's very difficult to align yourself with passion. And that's kind of the personal journey you've been on over the last 2 years. Is it doesn't mean that you can't be in the industry that you've chosen, but the reason why you're in it needs to be very, very, very real. You need to have a very honest conversation. And I've changed the definition of the word honesty. I think a lot of people use honest and honesty, and they think about not lying to their mom or their grandma. My definition of honest is to accept the transparent reality of your core identity. That means you've identified your unobstructed reality and you've found clarity in your existence. So what this means is that if you're in the physical training world, like probably 90% of your listeners are, they've gotten into it for whatever reason. I would challenge that 90% of them have gotten into it to hide something, to overcompensate something, to find something, to not, just as I got into the world of entrepreneurialism to hide my past and my shame, there is something there, and it could be very, very minimal. It could be very small. It could be something as simple as affection from your family. It could be something as maybe a divorce. It could be something as extreme as abuse. It could be something as extreme as obesity. Now going into, you're not obese. There could be something, and that's not bad, and that's not a bad thing. It's a matter of being honest with that, and then harnessing that and being real, vulnerable, authentic, all these different words that we're throwing out there. And it's not for marketing. I want everyone to be very, very clear on this. It's not for marketing. Don't go tell it's actually getting quite annoying to see all of these. It's a fad, the depression and the anxiety and the stress and all this stuff, these videos that are popping up all over YouTube. That's not what it's about. That does right now move people and gets people's emotions. And it's good to share your story so other people can relate. Don't take me wrong. But the reason that you really need to be doing it is for your own chemical alignment. It's for your own self. It's a very selfish thing to become vulnerable. It's a very selfish thing. Everyone tries to make it very selfless, which again, it has those properties. But when we're talking about the brain, when we're talking about the chemicals of the brain, it's very selfish because it allows you to release blockers. It allows you to release the hormones that are trying to get out. It allows you to be one with your chemical makeup, your core, instead of you trying to combat it. It's much like when people eat very, very healthy and then they call them cheat days. And then they have this huge amount of regret in a cheat day. And some people don't, some people do. The difference is the people that have the regret in the cheat day have actually convinced themselves on a subconscious level, chemically, that they are not a good person for doing that. Whereas people who don't have a problem with it look at it and say, you know what, this is a privilege, this is an honor, this is something that I get to do, this is something I want to do, and it's not affecting me. So you take that that's a very simplistic thing to look at. You take this on a larger, scale, is if you're telling everyone that you're a fit person and that you're training people to be fit because, you believe that people can have a better life when they're fit. That's not true, but it's not true to you. The reality of why you're doing that is it could be completely different. And then when you understand that, then you can go to the next part of existence as a human being, which is healing, and it's coming into a healed space. And now your passion can start aligning itself so easily with you because you're healed and you understand the process. You understand what's going on. You're honest. You know why you got into it. You know what you're doing. And then whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, whatever, starts putting things in your path so that you can take advantage of those things.
Yeah.
And what healing is having ultimate control and understanding of your journey. So that means you're no longer held by worthlessness, fear, hate, or remorse, shame, any of those things. You've completely healed. But the only way to get healed is to have honesty. And that honesty is as I defined it, is not, being nice to your, or not, lying about stealing ice cream or whatever. It's about accepting the transparent reality of your core identity. So who you are.
My business was going well, and as soon as I started to actually invest in myself and my own self-development, my business just went to a completely different level because I started to remove the blocks and the limiting beliefs and started to strip back the layers. And, where most people think it's some kind of Facebook strategy that's going to grow their business, actually it really, I asked the question in my VIP group and I was like, what's the major benefit that you've gotten from working with me? And it wasn't any particular strategy. And it was one word that came up and up and up, and it was confidence.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that I would love someday, and I'm building a lot of data on our back ends and doing stuff, actually first in world history, the kind of data that we're collecting. But I would love to do an experiment with this Facebook thing that you just brought up. I don't know if it's that just because you put up a Facebook video or a YouTube video, yeah, it gets views, it gets people who watch it. I don't know if it's that action itself. And we're talking about being vulnerable or telling your real story or getting honest with yourself, however you want to determine it. I don't know if it's the action that you just put it out there and now people know, or if it's more about, like I said, this freedom, this release where the energy. I am a big energy guy. I just did an interview with Jack Canfield, Chicken Noodle Soup for the Soul author, and the entire time in the interview we talked about energy, and it's fascinating. And we talked about all the different things that have been done around the world. There's actually a scientific institute that is backed by science that studies the world's energy and studies when things like wars are going on and things like the Trade Center collapsing, when these traumatic things happen and the world's energy shifts. And in that energy shift, there is actual scientific data that shows these shifts happening. So on a personal level, and if you're your own world, you're your own globe, and your energy is all tied up, it's all tense, it's all whatever, even though you're trying to be this powerful person, both physically, mentally, and emotionally and spiritually, but you're not authentic and you're not vulnerable. I don't know if it's the posting of the Facebook video or YouTube video that actually is doing anything in the core sense of marketing, or if it's the reality that now you have freed yourself up, and thus the energy around you shifts, your personality shifts, and different types of energies are now pulled towards you. And now your mind, your brain can connect in a way with other people that you've never been able to connect with, which thus leads to signed contracts. That's the reality, is that when you have a connection with someone, the amount of money that can flow through and the amount of exchange of goods that can flow through that connection can be limitless. Yes, you can create. Let's look at Donald Trump in the United States. He's a guy that not too many people connect with. Okay, that's just, and I'm not bashing the Donald. I'm just saying he doesn't connect very well with people, but he still makes money. He still gets money. Now let's look at somebody like a Richard Branson, who you have personal experience with. He connects. He's a big connector. He connects with you. The difference in their wealth is it's not even comparable. One's well off, one's well off, So, and one has a legacy, and one has a, and I'm sure, each of them have their positive and negative, but just as an example of connectivity. And so, anyway, a tangent, but I think that what people don't need to get lost in is that it's a marketing technique. It's this. It will be for the next year. I will tell you that it will be something. People sharing their closet information is going to attract other human beings. It's going to make people feel like, oh yeah, I can relate to you, or I have a cousin, or I have this. But just like everything else that happens, marketers ruin everything. And really, noise ruins everything. It's like the car alarm. When the car alarm was first invented, if a car alarm went off, I remember these days, if a car alarm went off in the late 80s, oh my gosh, early 90s, you were like standing by that car. You were ready to beat up whoever was stealing somebody else's car. Now when a car alarm goes off, we're all like, are you kidding me? Can you shut the damn thing up? Like, stop it. And or we don't even pay attention to it. And so we have to be very careful with why we do things, because if we do them for the wrong reasons, we get the wrong results. If we do them for the right reasons, we get the right results. What's wrong? What's right? That becomes the debate. That becomes the question.
Actually, it's funny because my brain suddenly, I'm all for the power of intention. If there's stuff that comes to me, I need to talk about it. And it's like, as soon as you said that, the watch thing came up. I remember when we were chatting about that $5,000 Breitling watch that I bought, and the fact that I actually recently gave it away, and my whole shift around money changed. I think it's fantastic to make as much money as you want to make, but it's, people do things with the wrong intent. And I had a massive spiritual shift around money recently. And like you said, it's all about intent. If you're there, wanting to, buy something and show it off to make other people feel lower than you, then that's different from actually wanting to buy something to experience it for yourself, right? So intent. Exactly. and putting, I shared my cocaine story, and that was actually I had a massive release from that, and I completely am in alignment with you and agree with you that I actually get my clients to do videos, and for me the reason why I did do videos and I put content out there was it's all about the intent. I wrote the blog post which was titled How to Kick a Filthy Cocaine Habit and Turn Your Life Around, and my intent was I need to get this out there for my sake, so that I cut off and I put it out there so that I'm committing to not doing it again. And there was one intention, which was if I just get one message from some person that says, Simon, you've helped me get off this shit, then that's worth it. And because there was fear coming into my brain going, well, people won't sign up with me because they'll say that I'm a druggie, all this kind of stuff, right? But I didn't care because I had intent, which was, I'm going to fucking change someone's life with this blog post. And do you know what happened? I actually ended up getting business from it anyway because of, the intent and people seeing the alignment with it. But also I got messages from, people I've been in school with, from people that were messaging me and saying, I'm in the same situation. It's changed my life. So I'm in complete agreement with you on that it's definitely a good therapy tool. It definitely helped me, and also 100% on reasons why we do stuff.
It does, and we have all of our, and we haven't got into it, but I work with youth now fully, and we have all of our youth do videos. Some of them we share, some of them we don't, and we also have them do a lot of writing and expressing, because there's the connectivity. And I'll tell you a little tip in this: if somebody's listening to this and they're wanting to share their story, or they're looking for healing and for hope and for therapy or whatever, is that actually making videos, doing that stuff is great. And it definitely can be well. And if you have a purpose and a reason, like you just outlined, do that. But if you're not in that position, you don't need to do that. Hand write your story. Literally, don't use a computer, use a pen and a piece of paper, and do not stop. Just write your story. Don't worry about, grammatical errors. Don't worry about any of that. Just write your story. And if you're right-handed and you're writing your story, and your story has to do with your childhood and it has to do with pieces of your childhood, switch hands, switch to your non-dominating hand and write your story. And there are things that happen with the connectivity of the brain, the chemicals, the motor senses. There's things that happen to your brain when you do a writing exercise. There's tons of studies. You can Google about it, but it's amazing. And by shifting the hand and going to your non-dominating hand when you're writing about your childhood, you actually connect to your subconscious part of your brain that's storing those childhood memories, because you are eliminating those barriers and those different chemical reactions that are taking place in perfection, handwriting, all that kind of stuff. So just a real simple tip to take that to the real level of therapy and healing. And then if there's a reason to share your story, there's a purpose to share your story, not just to create more noise, not just to get pity, but and as you said, the other thing is community. There's a lot of power in community. Using community in the right way can change your life forever. And you used community in the sense of, I'm going to put this cocaine story out there with the knowledge and pure intention that if I fuck up, somebody's going to be like, well, Simon, you're a loser. You just wrote about this over here, and now you're freaking, I'm at a party with you and you're doing a line. Like, what's your problem? and so you had that kind of that community support, even though it wasn't a bunch of people coming around you in an AA meeting or, whatever, a 12-step program. It was the community that you have created that you do want respect from. And that goes into, the six things that all human beings go through. And you've gone through Tony Robbins stuff, so you probably know what I'm talking about. But number one is you need to have acceptance. You need to feel a part of something. So you've created a community that and it's not a need in a needy way, it's a need in a human way. It's like walking by somebody who's drowning in a pool and saying, oh, you just need to breathe. What's your problem? I mean, as human beings, we need to be accepted by a community. So using your community to validate your progress is very, very, very therapeutic. But if you don't have that and you're working through this and nobody knows anything and there's no reason for you to share anything, get a piece of paper and a pen and write. And write it as if you're telling a story. Not write it as, I was hurt. Like, tell the story. Get as detailed as you possibly can. Pull out every memory you can. And if when I write, and I write two or three times a week, I'll share something in a written form. And a lot of people read my writing, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult to read what I write. I will give you that right up front, because I go very, very real. But at the end of all my writing, it's very happy. It's applicationable. It's action steps. It's things you can do. But it's to take people through the journey. And there's a lot of psychological reason for that. But I learned by writing that way, not only does it help me personally, but it also, somebody who's really going through it, it actually helps stimulate the mind so that they can have the chemical reaction they need to have to release their own memories, which by releasing those memories, they're able to express their feelings, get the need, get the affirmation, get all the things that they need, and then heal that process or that point in their life. So stories are very, very powerful.
Yeah, I'm sure we kind of left the guys hanging a little bit when we started to delve into some of the psychology around putting on weight and the thing that you were being interviewed about previously. Let's just get fucking raw and honest. Why do let's take guys for example. Why do guys go and put on muscle?
The stereotypical answer is going to be more sex. Or acceptance by the opposite sex, or whatever your sexual orientation is. You're doing it for a lot of self glorification, that you want that attention. There'll be the conversation that it makes you fit, it makes you feel better, blah blah blah. But the hormones that it's creating are hormones that you get from sexual activity. And there is no other release on the planet other than if you use drugs or things like that, which is why we have, drug problems. There's no other chemical reaction in the body than an orgasm. It's the dopamine, the adrenaline, the serotonin. I mean, all the chemicals just blow up very quickly, and it's a rush, and it's an amazing feeling. And so we'll do not whatever it takes, but in some cases we'll do whatever it takes to have that experience. And, for a guy and for a woman, self-exploration in that, masturbation and things, they don't give the same releases. It doesn't give the same amount of chemical. And quite frankly, the bond and the chemical bond between, two people that's created, the smells, the exchange of hormones, that can't obviously happen in a solo act. And so, it's that really seems to be one of the top, 10 things. The other thing is just overall acceptance, and overall, and then the third level is that you're trying to accept yourself. People who have been made fun of for being obese, people who've been made fun of for, being skinny. My entire childhood, I was on 25 medications every day of my life until the age of 16. And I almost died, and there's a whole story there, and I share it in some places. But I was on 25 different medications. All were supposed to be, awesome, and they had no side effects. One of the medications that I was on, which at this time in the world's history, I think had been on the marketplace for about 15 years. And so it was supposed to be a safe drug. Well, about 4 or 5 years after I stopped taking it, they pulled it off the market because it stunted growth. So it literally stunted growth in human beings. And I was on that particular med for 10 years. I have been the same size since ninth grade, my entire life. I'm 5'11" and a half, and I'm 145 pounds, and that's what I've been since basically ninth grade. And I firmly believe that my growth was stunted. My genealogy and my genetics, I should be a 6'4", 6'5" kind of guy, and easily be able to be 260, 270, and I'm not. So my entire life I've been made fun of because of how skinny I am, how small I am, how I look like a high school kid. I have a six-pack. I have all that. But it was interesting is when I got into, this is what started my journey in this fitness thing, is I got into fitness and I started looking at it. I started, wanting to lift weights and do all these things. And then I asked myself, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I want to be healthy, or am I doing this because... And then I filled in the blanks. I was doing this because I felt inadequate. I didn't feel like I was worth anything. I didn't feel like I was a sexy man. I didn't feel like I was worthy of sex to a high level. It didn't mean I wasn't having sex. It just meant that in that experience, I wasn't connecting, and I wasn't worthy of connecting at another level. And once all that dissipated and I got rid of it, now fitness became something that was an asset, not dragging me down. And sex changed, and every aspect of that changed. And I started experiencing those acts and those periods of my life in such a stronger way than I'd ever had before. So, but what happens is that people will get stuck in that cycle, and then they put on more muscle, and they go to the next level, and they bench press. And I just had a guy at my house who spent 100 days doing a physical challenge. And he ripped his lower vertebrae, the discs, in deadlift about 35 days into the challenge. And he decided, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put on all this muscle. I'm going to put on all these different things. And he just grinded through it. And he looked like, I mean, he was chiseled. He was Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. I mean, the guy just looked amazing as a human specimen. He was just everything, every muscle was defined. He ended up winning some different competitions, had a really amazing quote unquote career there. But he shared with me the mass depression that he was living in, the hate for himself, the hate for this and all these different things. And that he thought that by doing this, challenge, by creating these wins in his life, that he was miraculously going to find happiness. And, we had about a 4-hour conversation, and we dove into that and found that that's not where it is. It's not where the happiness lies. That's not where the great sex lies. That's not where, getting rid of an addiction like cocaine or alcoholism lies. It's not there. And so I would say that many, many, many men, get into the industry to hide some inadequacies and some self-worth issues. And it doesn't make it bad. It's not a bad place to hide them. There's worse places, but again, it goes back to what we talked about before about being honest as to why you're doing it.
I want to come onto some business stuff because obviously we are the Fitpreneurs, but since I've got you on the podcast, I really want to carry on with this psychology stuff because I think it's going to be fascinating for people listening. What do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that trainers could be making with their clients that they're not even aware of when it comes to psychology when working with clients?
Setting expectations. I think that's the real thing is that what is your client's expectation from their workout? Are they looking, what's their why? I mean, we start with why, right? Simon, it's all about why are we doing what we're doing? Why are they doing what they're doing? What's their expectations? What are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to maybe hide? So you may still have to go through this as a trainer. You're trying to figure out yours and everything, but start asking theirs. Is it women? Okay. They just got a divorce. Maybe they're trying to, get their bodies in a position because they want to go attract another man. Men, their midlife crisis and they don't feel this. Figure out what their expectations are and then start, and you got to do some research and do some things on the brain, but then start to use that as a positive, not a negative. And so that you can set up the expectations so that the workout doesn't become how big can my butt get, how round can this get? How many, lines can I define on my stomach? Can I get a 6 or an 8 pack? How many inches are my biceps growing? What's my deadlift? What's my reps? What's my this? Get away from that and because then you'll have a longer lasting client because all that will wear off in about a 90 to 180 day cycle. And if you look at, I did a lot of marketing for gyms. We had a gym here in the United States just got sold, but it was called Gold's Gym. And I did a lot of marketing for them. And they found that obviously, their busiest time of the year is January 1st to the end of March, as far as people buying subscriptions and coming in for memberships, things like that. But, and then holidays and stuff. But the thing that was interesting is the 30-day cycle in fitness. Fitness is tough. It's a very difficult thing. It's disciplined. It's all these things. And if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you don't have the right motivation. So if you're a trainer, using the psychology in this world and using the brain as a positive thing, don't manipulate people, but using the brain as a positive thing to enhance somebody's experience by them completely understanding their why, you could double or triple the length of your contracts, the length of your retention. You could 10x it, actually. Screw double, triple. You'll 10x it because they will be doing things for the right reason, which then empowers them, which then gives you the ability to guide them through. I think too many coaches and everything try to make their clients dependent on them. That is not what you want to do. You want to empower your client, and you're the guider. All you're doing is guiding the ship. That's going to make this thing, you're going to 10x all of your relationships with your clients. You're going to 10x your revenue. You're going to 10x your referrals because that person's brain is going to be assisting them chemically. Emotions do not exist. Emotions are labels that we've given chemical reactions. In that sense, obviously I understand emotions exist, but they're chemical reactions that are going on in the brain. And so the emotion of somebody just coming in and wanting to work out because they want to get more men in their life, or they just had a divorce, or they want to, look better in a bikini, those things will dissipate very, very quickly. life will get in the way, things will happen. If you can get to their why, the core of what they're trying to accomplish, give them a reason past the superficial bullshit that they've bought into in their lives, you will 10x your business. And if you do it to yourself, you will 10x your relationships and your connectivity with your clients. So your business will expand naturally because you're just using the most powerful organism on the planet, which is organ on the planet, which is the brain. You're using it in a positive way. This is why Tony Robbins is the $400 million man, is because he understands the chemical and energetic power of the human mind. And so if you just tap into that a little bit by what's your why? Why are you doing it? Get honest with yourself. Stop the bullshit. Be real, be raw, be authentic. Go to your clients. Get that relationship with them. Change your questionnaire form to, do you want to be in a bikini, to why are you doing it? Where are you going with it? Tell me a little bit about yourself, and really dive into it and use the physical activity to enhance serotonin levels, to increase dopamine, to allow adrenaline to do its thing. Use those so that it's positive and it's powerful. You'll 10x your business overnight. Overnight.
100%. It all comes down to mindset. And unfortunately, one of the biggest struggles a lot of trainers have is they're not willing to go to that place, ask those questions. That someone comes in, it's like, what do you want to do? Lose weight? Okay, let's start a program. And this is where the confidence comes in, and actually building your there's a trainer's confidence and being willing to ask the right questions to get the best outcome that you possibly can in your business. Right, I want to move on. Because time is a ticking. We could talk for hours, but we all know what people's attention span is, including mine. Talking about a human project, but also really about, not everyone is going to be able to drop their business and do what you've done. You created yourself, a fantastic position. I know it's not been all an easy ride, so let's just hold that up. But, for those that, obviously they still want to run their business, how important is it to get an alignment with something that's going to actually drive the business further forward? And let's then move on into human project and really about that mission and how we can help. Yeah.
So it goes back really to what this whole interview, this whole conversation has been, which is getting authentic and getting real and getting aligned and having the power of mindset. And I don't care how you want to believe it, whether you believe it's mindset, energy, chemical, God, whatever, it's all the same. So it doesn't really matter how you want to do it. Chemically speaking, it's all the same. So by getting yourself in a position, you just mentioned it's hard for a trainer to ask the questions. It's because it's hard for you to ask the questions yourself. It's really what it comes down to. The human brain, the human mind, the human body will only do what it's accustomed to doing. So if it's difficult for you to have a real conversation with yourself, it's going to be very difficult for you to have a real conversation with anyone. So there's your first tip in taking care of that. And same thing with aligning yourself with a purpose outside of, whether it's charity for cancer, whether it's a charity for this or that. That is a chemical reaction that happens in the brain that reminds you of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And so by being in certain spaces where you feel very connected and very real and very authentic to yourself, but you're not the one running it. So even a donation, even a monthly reminder on your credit card report where you see, I gave $20 to cancer research, not because you're giving $20 to cancer research because it seems like the right thing to do and your neighbor convinced you, but because it's for you. So look at where you're giving your money and align yourself and your time, because time is valuable. Money's critical. Time is valuable and needed. Together, they're huge. Just donating your time, if that's all you can do, that's great. But realize that it does take money to turn the lights on for every nonprofit and every person that's dedicated their lives to service. So my point is that if you just throw $20 at cancer research because it's just a cool thing to do, it's not going to have the same thing for you. I'm not dogging cancer research. I'm just using it as an example. But if you have somebody in your family, you yourself, you have a connection with it and you're doing it, it can become a really strong asset in your business because it keeps you aligned. It keeps that brain, it keeps the subconscious and the conscious communicating with each other. It allows you to use both the front and the back of your brain. I mean, it just works. And so with a human project, just so, and again, you're right, we could talk for hours on everything, but a human project's core mission And its core fundamental principle and why we started it was that school, going back to the beginning of the story, the 4.5 hours that I spent at the school. You can Google John Lee Dumas and Wesley Chapman, and it'll pop up an Entrepreneurial on Fire episode. So I think it's entrepreneuronfire.com/podcast/Wesley Chapman, or you can Google it. And I tell the entire story of what happened after that's the school and starting a human project. But hearing all of those stories from the youth that are being abused, that connected me to myself very, very selfishly. And very powerfully, I realized, as I said earlier in our interview, that the 33 years up to that point was my training ground. I had been built, trained, and purposed for this mission. And so I started, the next day, literally, started a human project, which was that brand and that design and that I Am Human t-shirt that I ordered months prior that I had no idea what the heck it was for. That was everything that I had built, designed, and within about 2 weeks, because of having that experience and building the brand and building everything, within 2 weeks, we fully launched and we went out into the marketplace, and I changed my life. And now my mission is to build a community of empowered youth who have been through the worst of the worst, the medium of the medium, and the low of the low. And what I mean by that is youth that have been abandoned, youth that have been abused, youth that have had to live in split homes, youth that are, just dealing with societal pressure, bullying, whatever. We have a smorgasbord of youth that we work with now. We're in 7 countries. We have thousands of youth. I know personally I've been in front of about 50,000 youth in the last year. We've had hundreds of youth who were suicidal come into the program and put down the knives, the guns, the rope, drain the pills. We've had cutters, thousands of cutters that have come into the program and started dropping the razors and stopped cutting, burning, self-harming. Wow. And all these principles that we've talked about, all this brain stuff, all these things, we've built an online world, an online program, and we're actually rebuilding the whole thing now and doing it even on a whole nother level. But we've built a program, that's why we're in 7 countries, that is virtual and that does one thing, and not in the hokey way that we've heard this word be butchered over the last 10 years. Does one thing. It empowers the youth, and literally empowers them, gives them the power in themselves to realize that any of the shit that they've gone through, whatever it is, because again, something we have to remember as human beings is that the phrase walk in that other person's shoes should be eliminated from the English phrase book, whatever we call it. It's the stupidest thing ever. No one can walk in someone else's shoes. It's even difficult to walk beside someone and understand what they're going through. The only person that understands that person is that person. You can relate, but really understanding, which means that somebody's trauma is unique to them. If I stub my toe for the very, 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 very first time in my life, it's the most painful thing I've ever experienced up to that point. Now, if I stub my toe 100 times, I know what the tolerance is. I know what's going on. If I break my arm for the first time, that's the most painful experience I've ever gone through in my entire life. So the brain does not, we as human beings want to say, oh, if someone was sexually abused, that's horrible. Somebody went through a divorce, well, that sexually abused person, that person's really had a bad life. The guy that went through a divorce, come on, whatever. But to the individuals, the person that went through sexual abuse, they understand pain differently. They understand pain. They understand their pain. The person that went through the child that went through a divorce, they have their pain, and that to them is the worst pain they've ever been through. So there's no level, right? There's no thing. And finally, I've been preaching this for about 10 years now, and finally, the science is backing this up. They did a science study between somebody who'd been sexually abused and somebody who'd been neglected, and they found that the brain operates exactly the same as far as the chemicals and the pains and all this stuff. But what they actually found is the thing that is the problem is the triggers. And somebody who's been sexually abused, your triggers are pretty minimal. Maybe if I was tied down, so if you do not tie me down, even to this day, you try to tie me down, and there's a beast mode that comes out in my body, and that's just part of my makeup. It's gotten a lot less, and now people, it used to be that friends would come up behind me and give me bear hugs, and then I I am a karate guy, and they'd be on the ground. And so now you can give me a bear hug, no big deal. But still, there's different things. The sexual fantasies of being tied up don't happen in my relationship. So, but that's a trigger for me. That doesn't happen very often. Neglect, however, can be your friend doesn't text you back fast enough. You don't get 500 likes. You only get 460. Those are neglect triggers. So the study found that people who are neglected actually have a harder time being in society than those that were sexually abused. Very fascinating study. But it's something we've been preaching. So long-winded. The whole thing that we've built is giving every child, regardless of where they are, whatever level of pain they've gone through, empowerment in themselves to know all the standard things that we preach from stages and we yell all the time and in the mirror is, I'm enough, I'm worth it, I'm strong enough, I can overcome this, I'm beautiful, all those things. We've given them the tools they need to experience that and have the guidance that they can continually come back to. We have a reward system. We have a summer camp. We have a program. I speak. We go knees to knees. We have videos. I mean, it's a very complex program. Because of my business experience, I was like, I'm going to blow this shit out of the water. We're going to create something that's never been created before. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking, someone's done this, but that's okay. I'm going to keep moving forward. What we have found after after a year and a half of doing this and 11 months of dedicated research into trying to find other people who are doing this, there's no one else on the planet. No one else on the planet that is doing what we're doing. And our second level, and that was our start, what we're about to launch next year, there's just nothing like it. Nothing like it. We'll have a 52-week course program guided and directed for any youth around the world to go through and experience. We'll have another 300 guest programs that we install into the back-end system. We have a point system. We'll have a 90-day summer camp that is completely free. For 90 days, a youth will be able to be with us. We will be bringing in some of the greatest minds on the planet, like Gary Vaynerchuk, like yourself. We're working on getting Richard Branson to come in and spend time with these youth and educate them on every aspect of life: business, personal, financial, relationship, sexual, physical, nutritional. 90 days. I mean, so there's just all these different things we're doing. I get so excited about it. The bottom line is, and then we can wrap this up. The bottom line: does this work? Is it effective? 2 days ago, I had a youth at my home. And this is a youth that they've gone through 19 hours of our program. So they've spent 19 hours in our program. This particular youth has been raped more times than I even want to share. They've had a miscarriage and an abortion. They've been gang raped. They've been raped by their family member. They've been raped by other people. They've put themselves in situations and been date raped, different things like that. They've been abused. She's tried to commit suicide. She's been a cutter for the last 4 years. She spent 19 hours in our program. 19 hours in our program. She came to my home with her mom. We went through 2 hours of just talking and going through some things. As they were leaving, she asked her mom to stay in the car, and she handed me a little black box. This little black box will become very famous because of what I'm going to do with this thing. But she handed me a little black box, and she said, open it. And I took the black box, I opened the black box, and inside of it was 36 stainless steel razors. And she looked at me and she said, this represents 36 times that I've said no because of you.
Wow.
I could tell you a ton of stories that are similar, but that was so powerful. She's been in inpatient care. She's gone through psychology or counseling. She's done all kinds of things. Her parents are very active trying to get her help. She has very loving parents, but nothing was really, moving the needle for her. And it's not about, please, take this about me. This is about a system. This is about an energy that's passing through my entire team. This is a team effort. This is not, I was flattered that she said it was because of me, but my immediate response to her, this has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with you. Mm-hmm. You did this. Yep. I didn't do anything. That gives her, reaffirms it's her power. It's her. It would be so easy to take the glory And as personal trainers, it might be so easy for us to say, we created that specimen. We made that person change their lives. And that sells some contracts, and that gets you some book deals, and maybe that gets you a podcast interview. But the reality is, if we want to make a real change in someone's lives, is we have to empower them. We have to give them the power. We have to take a step back. We have to become the guide, and that's it. And that's exactly this story. This girl, 19 hours in a program. She'd spent years going through this pain, years going through traditional stuff. And I'm not dogging traditional stuff, but I do have my opinion on it. And in 19 hours, she was able to say no 36 times. And just for realism or realness, she said yes 4 times. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that ratio, in a short period of time of a 36-4 ratio. If you had 36 people sign contracts and 4 that didn't, I think you'd be pretty happy.
Definitely. So, I mean, it's an amazing story. The reason why I wanted to do this interview with you is because of the reach I have. I've got access to all these amazing fitpreneurs that are listening to this now. But truth be told, they have amazing reach too, don't they? So, exactly. I think that the importance of people listening to us really understanding that, many of you have got gyms, many of you got access to local communities. You do, maybe charity boot camps at the weekends. You've got access to actually change people's lives and make people aware of this campaign. It's actually literally stopping people from killing themselves, cutting themselves, from literally not being able to get to the position that you're in to have a fucking career, And actually something that I want to do personally is actually work with, because this is fairly new for me too, work with Wesley to, get some of the youngsters into this industry, helping more people. I think it's going to be amazing. So this is going to grow. So, Fitpreneurs is definitely in alignment with a human project. So one thing we do on the show, Wesley, is give people, one action step, but I want to make this 3. And we did this recently on a Hangout interview. What can the guys listening do right now if they're passionate, if they've listened to the story and they're like, do you know what? I really want to align myself with a human project, and really empower youth and start to give back.
So we'll do the same thing we did on the Hangout. We'll do the 3 levels. The first level is share it. Go to the website. There's stories of the kids. There's, Instagram stuff. There's tons of things you can share. It takes 10 seconds. Share it. Get the link out there. You never know what happens. We did a campaign a month ago, and an organized campaign, and we had 1.6, I think, million impressions on our website in about a 7-hour period of time. And out of that stemmed hundreds of children coming forward and telling their stories and needing help and liking our Facebook page. And every day we get a little trickle of somebody who says, hey, I saw a tweet from so-and-so about you guys, and I've been watching you for the last few weeks. I need some help. So you just don't know who's in your audience. So something as simple as a tweet, a Facebook post, Instagram about what we're doing, that's the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing for you to do, 10 seconds. If you're like, you know what? I want to go to the next level. I want to help. Go to our website. We have a very, very unique way of asking for donations. Yes, you can do a donation. You can make a one-time donation. There's a little heart icon in our menu of our website. You can click on that and go make a donation one time, make it recurring. We love that. $25 is kind of a minimum that we ask for, but if you can do 5, that's great. But what our whole core of getting donations is that we do a t-shirt program. It's a limited t-shirt. We curate it with a celebrity. We have Prince E that's coming on board in August 1st. We're working with LL Cool J, Avery Wilson, people like Bruno Mars. We're constantly trying to contact these kind of celebrities to give it some weight in the noisy social media world. But these t-shirts are awesome because they're quotes. They're inspirational things. They're things that start a conversation. So you get a t-shirt every month. It's $30 a month to be a part of the subscription model. 84% of the ticket price goes directly into our work. The other, percentage goes into manufacturing the shirt and ship, all that kind of stuff. But 84% is a pretty amazing number. the bigger part of why we did that is because of the experience that the vision I had of everyone's wearing this t-shirt, I am human, and also the experience we've had with our clothing line and our t-shirts has been amazing. I actually gave a speech once to 300 people when I was flying across the United States from California to New York, because the stewardess asked me what my shirt was about, the message that was on my shirt. I started talking about it, and she asked the plane if I could take 10 minutes and explain what we do. That's pretty fucking powerful. I did a walk across New York from JFK to Brooklyn wearing a t-shirt and met about 100 people and talked to them. It was a phenomenal experience. I write about it on my blog. It's called My Walk Across New York. And it's because of a t-shirt. So it's powerful. You're donating, 84% goes to our cause. It's amazing. But then you wear that shirt out in public and people say, holy shit, what are you doing? The third level of how you can get involved is by becoming a volunteer and setting up a pod. We call them human pods in your area. And we're putting all of this out there. You'll get the 52-week lesson plan. We guide you through how to help kids, how to find the kids, how to work with youth. And so you can actually, get your hands dirty and actually get in and play with us in this arena, in this world, and become a mentor to youth. And that's an exciting program. We'll be launching that fully in 2016. We've just got a lot of things we got to make sure, the legal side, to this side, to that side, all the content, so that you don't need to be a trained psychiatrist, you don't need to be a professional anything. You just need to be a human being that cares about another human being. It was $2.1 million was spent on me, to figure out what was wrong with me when I was a child. $2.1 million. Out of that $2.1 million, I got a lot of knowledge and information, and I know how to talk to a counselor and make them do whatever I want, really. But the thing that saved my life was a $12 basketball. It was an individual who said, "Screw it! I don't want to hear about your childhood. I don't want to analyze you. I'm going to play. I love basketball, fitness. Right there it is. I love basketball." He bought a $12 basketball, and we played for 1 hour every week. We played basketball. That's all we did. And then slowly I started talking to him. I started telling things to him. And he changed my life. He changed my life. That basketball changed my life. So you do not need to be, quote unquote, a professional anything. You just need to be a human being. So that's the third level of what you can take. And if you want to do that, message me. Right now we have about 160 applicants. And you do have to apply. There are some things that we have to go through with you. Got to make sure that it's appropriate that you play with children. Unfortunately, it's just the world we live in. But we want to protect everyone. So we got a whole program that we're putting together that's going to be amazing, and we'll be launching that in 2016. And so those are your three levels. Yeah. Tweet about it, message about it, subscribe. Become part of the subscription for T-shirts, or set up a pod. And there's no boundaries. There's no borders. So if you're in the UK, if you're in Africa, I don't care where you are listening in the world right now to this, because I know your reach and podcast reach in general is global. This is a global program. It's a global program. So if we have a language issue and you can help with the language issue, that could be something you could volunteer with too. So everything's created in English, and we haven't had a problem yet with that. But if we need to do some stuff and you have ideas, let's make it happen.
Cool. Excellent stuff. So some good actions for you guys. Also go and like the Human Project page. And I want to know from each of you guys, are you supporting this cause? If you are, post on the Fitpreneurs page, just I'm supporting a Human Project, tag them in it, and also post to our page so that I can just see how many of you guys are actually supporting this and actually move things further forward for this amazing cause. Wesley, your book recommendation before we do a wrap up.
Just since of what we're talking about, is Quantum Warrior, The Future of the Mind. It's by John Kehoe. It's going to mess you up in a good way. Just kind of talking about the mind and the future and the power and becoming a quantum warrior and understanding the foundations of beliefs, the subconscious, understanding all those kinds of things. It's actually the last book I read about 4 years ago before I started creating my own content and stuff. So amazing book.
Good stuff. Guys, as always, head to iTunes to give us a 5-star review. We Fitpreneurs are now in alignment with a human project, so we're going to be supporting it every step of the way. Also, Periscope. You're going to want to check out the next episode of the Fitpreneurs when I teach you all about this amazing new social media platform where you can get your message out there. So you can follow me on Periscope, get added to that, add the app. Also on Twitter, @BoyLovel. Also the Periscope app, which is @BoyLovel. Also, Wesley, thank you so much for coming on board. I know this is going to change many, many lives, and I will be obviously in contact very soon.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
Take it easy.
Guys, thanks for the killer episode. Listen, if you want to take your fitness business to the next level, to eliminate your competition, create ultimate freedom, buy new houses, cars, which could blow up, travel the world, or open your own gym where you can lift really heavy weights, then head to www.thefitpreneurs.com/free call for details on how to apply for your free accelerator call. Until the next episode, hasta la vista, Fit Bros.